welcome to another episode of A Drummer's Guide 2. So today might be a bit of a long one. I'm not sure yet, but it's a question that's come from Webby98, and he has, I'm assuming a he, that's terrible. They are asking, what was it like recording Last of Our Kind? So for anyone that doesn't know, Last of Our Kind is an album that I recorded with Darkness. We recorded it in 2014. Yeah, I think that's right, October 2014. It's an album that I'm so incredibly proud of. I love those guys so much. So they were just asking me, what was it like? You know, what was the vibe? So I thought I'd just sit and chat about it and reminisce, partly because my memory is horrendous. Like in life, my memory is so bad, so this is kind of a way for me to document this so that I don't forget and I can watch it back and go, oh yeah, that's what happened. But I guarantee you I've already forgotten half of what happened, because at the time of this filming, it's almost 6 years ago, which seems crazy. But I'll start at the beginning of how I even got involved with the Darkness, because I guess it makes sense to start there. So talk about rock and roll. Well, is it rock and roll? I think it's a sign of the times of how I got involved with them. So I got an email from someone that just said, hi Emily, seen your video on YouTube. So it's a video of me playing to Foo Fighters' Best of You, covered in fairy lights. Love your playing. Wanted to see if you'd be interested in a new project that I'm involved with. Signed, Dan Hawkins. And the name Dan Hawkins, I was like, why do I recognise that name? I don't know why I recognise that name. And I looked it up. And when I googled Dan Hawkins, 2 Dan Hawkins came up. The first was the guitarist from The Darkness, and I was like, that's where I know that name from. The second was a bass player from Surbiton, who ironically now follows me on Instagram, I think. So hi Dan Hawkins from Surbiton. If you see this, which the chances are minimal, but it's fine. So I just thought, well, obviously it's the bass player from Surbiton. Fine, great. I wonder what this project is. Anyway, I emailed back and I was just like, yeah, that's great, sounds good. Just give me a call tomorrow. Left my number and literally forgot about it. I know that I talk about me having a bad memory. When I tell you that it fell out of my head, this information, I was like, anyway, I'm gonna go and play some drums. So the next day I get a phone call from a number that I don't recognise. I was like, who is this calling? Because I'm an idiot. And I answered the phone and it was on the other end, I'll never forget, oh hi Emily, it's Dan Hawkins from The Darkness. And I was like, oh, it is you. Hi, how are you? Anyway, we got chatting, and what transpired was that the band were parting ways with their current drummer, Ed, and they were looking for a drummer to record their next album, which became Last of Our Kind. I obviously was like, yeah, I'd absolutely love to be a part of that. They said they'd seen my video on YouTube. They also had we had some mutual friends who had kind of said, yeah, she'd be great for that. So yeah, they were like, look, do you fancy coming down to the studio, having a jam through some of the new tracks for the album, maybe some of the old tracks as well? I was like, yeah, brilliant, that sounds really good fun. And we booked a date for, I want to say it was in July of 2014, may have been June or July. And it was a random Sunday. In fact, it was a Sunday. And I was like, great, just send over the songs, send over the list of the old stuff that you want to go through, and I'll learn it, and I'll come down and we'll have a jam and we'll see where we go from there. So anyway, learnt these songs, went down to where Dan was living at the time, which was the studio as well. And yeah, it was great. I just thought in my head, you know what? Nothing might come of this. This is just, it's a really cool opportunity. Even if it ends up me just being in the room with those 3 guys and playing those songs. I mean, at that point, I'd been playing I Believe in a Thing Called Love and Growing on Me for years in covers bands. Years! And I just thought, even if all that comes from it is that I get to play those songs with the guys that actually wrote it, that's going to be awesome fun. Cool. I'm a winner, baby. So I went down there and met the guys. They were so lovely, and we had a play, and it was awesome. I mean, playing I Believe in a Thing Called Love with those guys, I was like as soon as that guitar started, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna swear, but I was like, oh my goodness, this is how it's meant to sound. Like, it was just this instant sound that it was like thick and perfect. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then watching them playing with them, hearing Justin sing, and it was just a real moment of like, this is cool. If this is all that comes of this, this is cool. I'm happy bunny. So anyway, and then we sort of sat and we hung out and we were chatting and just got on super well. We went for a curry and it was lovely. I had such a nice time. And anyway, so parted ways, went home, and they basically just got in touch for like, look, we'd love you to come record the album. I was like, that's amazing. I said, the only fly in the ointment is I've got a tour booked in and I'm not around until after September or something like that. And they were like, it's fine. We've seen that on your website. We want to work around you. And I was like, really? Okay, great. That sounds good. So that we basically booked it in that I was touring with an artist called Tom Bailey, who used to be in a band called the Thompson Twins back in the 80s. So we worked it out so that I had like, I think it was a week at home, so I could just run through all the songs. And then I was going to go off and record this album. And so the way that it kind of ran was we were recording at Dan's house, which was his studio. His lovely wife and 2 daughters at the time. He now has a son as well. They, bless them, they kind of were like shipped off somewhere. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. We're kind of kicking you out of your house to record this album. They're super cool though. They're so lovely. So, yeah, and we were staying there, in fact, it wasn't just 4 of us, so it was the 4 of us and the engineer, and we sometimes had a couple of other people come in. But, yeah, for a month, and I was basically booked in there for a month, and the deal was, it was kind of like, right, the first 2 weeks we're going to do pre-production, and then the next 2 weeks we're going to record. So, pre-production involves just getting the songs together. So they had all the songs pretty much recorded in demo form with electronic drums already recorded that Ed had recorded whilst they were on the road. I think with Lady Gaga. I think that's what they said, but don't quote me on that. I think that's what they said. So the tracks are pretty much done. There are only a couple that weren't knocked into shape, and those were what became Mudslide and I want to say Mighty Wings. But I could be wrong. Again, my memory is so horrendous. So the first 2 weeks basically involved us, so for pre-production, to save our ears, it was an electronic kit, so we could control the volume and just get the parts together, and then just everyone playing at low volumes, basically, so that our ears didn't get ruined, because it's very, like, it tires you out when you have to listen to full-on instruments. So anyway, the way that our sort of like day-to-day life looked like was we would all get up, I don't know what time, I have no idea, we'd have some breakfast, and then the guys are really into running. I was not really into running when I got with them. A little bit, but not like them. I mean, first of all, the 3, Dan, Frankie and Justin, are tall. They are tall guys. They have long legs and they love running. So anyway, they would go running every morning, and I just, either I wouldn't or I would try and go for a bit, and I'd just be like, I'm just, this is ridiculous. This is just too much. So anyway, yeah, so they'd go for a run, or we'd go for a run, or whatever. And then we'd get going, and we'd start, we'd just spend the day playing music and just playing through the songs, creating the parts, rewriting some stuff, writing some stuff, and just generally sort of like hanging out. And it was awesome. It was so good. And just sitting there, being able to watch the process of the songs coming together. Obviously, I was a small part of that process, but realistically, the bulk of that process comes from Dan and Justin, and just watching them work together and bounce off of each other. And I mean, Justin literally just like blasting out lyrics just so casually with this, I almost swore, incredible voice, like incredible but effortless voice. So yeah, we'd do that. We'd have some lunch in the middle, and luckily the guys love food, so we connected on that. It was like so good. And then and then in the evenings we'd just have dinner, and then we'd sit around and we'd either play more music depending on how the day had gone, or we would like watch a film, or I think, what were we watching? we were watching a series, something with Ricky Gervais, I think, but I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, we would do that in the evenings and then go to bed, and we would get up and the next morning we'd do that. So that was the first 2 weeks. I think before the end of those 2 weeks, though, we started transitioning into recording the drums. So generally speaking, when you're recording music, you record the drums first. That doesn't mean that I was in the room by myself. I would have the guys playing their instruments, but we were only really properly tracking the drums so that then the guys could build and record their parts after the fact. So I think we probably started recording a week in, and we were doing, I don't know, 2 or 3 tracks a day, I guess, which meant that everything just got done really quickly, which was awesome. And the sound that Dan got from my drums, from the room, all of that was just incredible. And I was like, I want to pick up this room and this rig and these mics and you and just put it like somewhere else. So we had an engineer as well, assistant engineer, called Ian Norfolk, who I think he's on tour with them now as one of their techs. He's a lovely fella. And then we would talk about things like the artwork, the name of the album. It wasn't called Last of Our Kind until very late on in the day. There were a few names. There was hundreds of ideas for artwork. I can see a few of them right now, but I probably won't say. Just all these concept ideas for what the next year of touring was going to look like, and then obviously just getting to know each other. That's the other thing. I mean, those three, obviously they know each other very well, but they didn't know me. I was pretty much a stranger. So we'd talk about, all sorts of stuff, just life sort of stuff, which was really great. And and that's kind of, I mean, what else is there to say? It was an amazing time. It was full of so much love and just creation, just creating music. And then once my sort of parts were done, I had a couple of days that I was still booked in there, if you like, before I had to go off and do other work. And they were like, do you fancy singing some backing vocals on some of the tracks? I was like, no, I don't sing backing vocals. Are you crazy? But they were like, look, why don't you? And they were so supportive and just like, just try something. Like, just why not? And I'm shy. I'm shy when it comes to things like that because it's just not in my nature to be all loud with my voice, which I know is ironic because I'm looking at a camera right now and I'm probably being quite loud. But they were like, why not? So if you listen to Mudslide, there's me screaming on Mudslide. They made me do some weird vocal thing where they were like, just try something, like something along like an Asian scale. And I just did something which kind of started out okay, and then it all just went to pot, and they were like, I like the beginning of that. And it's like, oh, okay. But yeah, there's a bunch of me sort of screaming and singing along on I should have actually looked this up before I actually came to talk about this, but there are a bunch of songs with me singing backing vocals and all sorts. But it was so much fun. It was such a lovely space to be in. It was such a lovely group of people to be around. There was so much support for getting the best performance out of each of us. Like collectively, all of us would support each other to get the best performance possible for the songs and to create the best versions of the songs, if that makes sense. And like I say, and once I left, the lads carried on sort of doing their guitar parts, bass parts, all of that. They'd started before I left. And once they were done, then Dan was left by himself to mix for, I think, 2 weeks. I think it sent him a little bit crazy, but the end result of that album is so phenomenal. I think the sound of it is it's massive. It's massive. Dan Hawkins is just a phenomenal producer. I think he's brilliant. I think he's wonderful. So, anyway, I guess that's what I can remember of my time with The Darkness recording Last of Our Kind. It was great. I'm just so, I always say this, but I genuinely mean it. I'm so proud to have been a part of that album and to have that album to show, because I think it is a great album. I think it sounds amazing, and I think that me being a part of it is like minimal. It's such a small part of why it turned out the way that it did. And like I said, I'm just lucky to have been a part of it. Anyway, I'm going to go. I've been rambling on at you about this, but thank you so much for the question. If you have a question of your own that you'd like me to answer, if you'd like a subject that you'd like me to talk about, it doesn't need to be my personal experience in that directly. It can be something more general. Then let me know. Just stick your question in the comments or get in touch online anywhere. If you look me up at Emily Drums, pretty much on all social media, you'll find me. And yeah, I hope you're well wherever you are, whatever you're up to, whatever you're doing. I hope that you are healthy, safe and well. And I will see you next week for another subject. Who knows what it'll be? Anyway, lots of love. See you guys later. Mwah. Bye.